Nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Brand new.
Hey, we're talking brand new Joe. Hey, we're on a brand new show. Deep dive, blow by blow. Spotting Uzis and crossbow. Like a buzzbow or pogo. Got ninjas like Don Shadow. Comics are how I spend my dough. We're coming to you, it's Derrick. It's time for Talking Joe. With Mark and Tim, here we go.
Brand new.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe comics podcast. Now, if you are new to the show, you can find out all about us over at talkingjoe.co.uk. That is the website that points to all of the places we can be found. Now, today is Duke versus Cobra Commander. It's all been leading up to this, and the ending no one will see coming. That's what the Synopsis said, but did it come to pass, and what did we think of it as we talk about G.I. Joe issue 6 from SYKBOUND, released Wednesday, April the 23rd, 2025. But I will not be doing that thing alone. As always, I'll be joined by my co-host. It's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, viewers and listeners. And viewers, after we talk about the covers, I think we're going to turn cameras off, so you'll be listeners then, too.
Very good. So what's going on in the world? We've been doing a little trip around the ENERGON universe to get things started. And it's SYKBOUND with the Talking Joe guys. Everyone calm down. We're here to talk comics. SYKBOUND at SYKBOUND. So let's going on that's super exciting at the moment from around the ENERGON universe. So Transformers, last issue 18, it was very exciting. A G.I. Joe team looked to be in the pages of Transformers. They were taking away Karl, I think it is, one of the human characters, and Ultra Magnus from the helicopters with winches and whatever.
But when you say a G.I. Joe team, it's characters that we don't necessarily recognize. They're all just in sort of regular fatigues, but they have the G.I. Joe star and stripe logo on their arms.
That's right.
But no one has, some telltale hat or beard, and we definitely know it's a character from the 80s or 90s.
Indeed.
As anonymous as all those guys who died at the beginning of Retaliation, who I guess I was supposed to feel sad about, but I didn't know who they were.
So I was all very excited about G.I. Joe and Transformers coming to head to head. And then we skip forward to Transformers 19, which came out this last month, April the 9th. And it's a new storyline, and it's going back, flashback time, to see what happened with Megatron, the new story arc. What happened to Megatron? I think it's called. And it's the story that every fan has demanded, which begins right there. I didn't demand it, Tim. I wanted more G.I. Joe. If anything, just get rid of the Transformers and just have...
No, as a Transformers fan, I was demanding Megatron.
Okay. Well, fair enough then. So that's what we've got. We've got a sort of a flashback story now back to the origins of Megatron, and there's, shark robots, all of that kind of stuff. But it means that we've not got a continuation of that G.I. Joe element of the story, unfortunately.
But maybe that's good, so the timelines of the monthly G.I. Joe and the monthly Transformers can get more in sync. We had spoken previously about how we weren't quite sure what issues of these 3 series, including Void Rivals, were all taking place in relation to each other. Whereas we did, say, with the Cobra Commander miniseries and the Duke miniseries, we could sort of figure out what issues were taking place compared to the others when.
Exactly, Tim. I had much the same idea, which was, essentially, there's this big out-and-out battle. Cities are getting destroyed in the pages of Transformers with these rampaging robots, and that's not being referenced in G.I. Joe yet. So it feels like Transformers had got a little bit ahead. And then also there's a team with G.I. Joe logos capturing a Transformer. So it feels like, yeah, it's got a little bit ahead of the G.I. Joe sort of continuity. So this Megatron story will give a pause and potentially allow G.I. Joe to catch up again, it feels like.
Once again, I'm really struck by this SYKBOUND approach, which the editors have referred to, and I guess the writers too, in the letters pages of more than one title. They're keeping it to 3 books, right? They're not going to do a bunch of G.I. Joe spin-offs in the Energon universe. They're not going to do a bunch of Transformers spin-offs. Void Rivals isn't splitting into 2 books. And no one is saying that didn't work at IDW, because for a while it did. Actually, for much longer did it work than it didn't. And there are 2 G.I. Joe books if you count A Real American Hero. But I've been thinking about this idea that if you slowly tell these stories, and you don't, these 2 words are kind of loaded, so I'm not trying to add a lot of meaning here, but overwhelm or confuse the reader, because there are many points in the IDW Transformers continuity and the IDW G.I. Joe continuity where there were good jumping on points, there were good starting points, but if you wanted to read back a year, or now if you want to read all of it, it can be confusing what series leads into which, what series becomes what series, what a crossover entails. And both as a reader, right, I'm just buying these 3 monthly titles, and as a store owner, right? Yes, it's a hair complicated, because I'll say to a customer, well, before you read G.I. Joe, there are these 4 miniseries to read, right? But then I can sort of tie it up. I can say, this is them becoming G.I. Joe. This is them forming the team and figuring out who the bad guys are. And it's very clear, right? Void Rivals on the spine, there's a 1 and a 2, right? Transformers on the spine, of the graphic novel, there's a 1 and a 2. G.I. Joe, there's about to be a volume 1. And it's, but the hardcovers are coming, and anyway, so not overwhelming the readership, and we can all say we want more stories, and maybe some of us could handle it with the space and the money, but it's a lot to ask of readers who are buying other comics and have other things going on.
Mm-hmm. And then the other recent announcement I posted, as always with most of the news, I posted that onto our Facebook group. So that's what the Facebook group would look like up here. Talking Joe, a G.I. Joe Comics podcast. I shared the news about the Energon Universe special. So it will be available in 2 main flavors. It will be first available as an exclusive cover as part of the Free Comic Book Day, Saturday, May the 3rd, not too far away from now. And so that will generally be free to you, the consumer, from your comic book shop, although the comic shop itself has to pay a small fee for the privilege, assuming no disruption from all of the Diamond bankruptcy. Fingers crossed.
Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts has gotten its Energon Universe 2025 Free Comic Book Day comic already. I've already got my copy and read it.
Oh, Tim, you cheated.
Well, as store owner, I think I'm encouraged to read things early so that I can recommend them. But also, in terms of shipping Free Comic Book Day comics, Diamond, the distributor, which, up until this past week, owned Free Comic Book Day, because Diamond is now probably owned by someone else. So someone else owns Diamond and owns Free Comic Book Day. The idea was always that the free books were shipped to stores well in advance, I think, so that in case anything went wrong, there was time to do a replacement shipment. Mm-hmm. So some of the free books we've had actually for a while. Not like normal comics where we get them the day before they're on sale, or maybe 3 days before they're on sale. Free Comic Book Day comics, traditionally we get several weeks ahead of time. And that's nice. We can stop sweating and we can plan. Okay, so you're talking about these 2 flavors.
Yep. And then the second flavor is that if you cannot get the Free Comic Book Day comic version, there is an opportunity to purchase it as the Energon Universe Special 2025, which will be available in comic book shops shortly thereafter on May the 14th, 2025, with exactly the same Free Comic Book Day content, but with several different covers. So they have solicited A, B, C, D, E. A is Andrea Milana, B, Daniel Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer, C, Connor Hughes at 1 in 10, EJ Sue is cover D, 1 in 25, and Tom Reilly is the cover E, 1 in 50. And we had a couple of these shared with us. These, I think, are the quintessons. Is that right? The
emphasis on the first syllable, quintessons.
Quintessons, okay. And then we've got a Daniel Warren Johnson cover of, I think that is probably Spike or some two humans in what looks to be like a vinyl record store. And we also got a preview of his illustrated story, which seems to feature some musical Transformers.
Is this material that we're going to get to in our actual episode about this comic? Should we hold off on these covers?
Well, we could talk about a little bit more about this cover at the end. So this is a classified cover with clutch on the front. So it's got a big classified stamp against it. That is not because that's what the cover looks like and it's tying into the classified toy. It's because most of this image has been redacted so as not to spoil a surprise, which we get a hint of in this very issue at the end of it. The image that has been made public without leaks, if you really want to search for it, you can find the leaked version. But the public one at the moment has been redacted to avoid a little bit of a spoiler, which essentially we get at the end of issue 6. So maybe we'll talk about that shortly. So the people bringing us this particular issue, issue 6, are the normal crew. So writer Joshua Williamson, artist Tom Reilly, colorist Geordie Belair, letterer Russ Wooten, editor Ben Abernathy, publication design Andre Juarez, and production Ashby Florence. So yeah, great to have an entire first arc from a consistent team like this. And there will be some change when we get to issue 7 because Tom Reilly will be taking a break, the duration of which is TBC at this point. And it will be Andrea Milana stepping in as the artist for issue 7. You might remember him as being the artist from Cobra Commander. So interesting to see that tag team, Duke, Tom Reilly, Cobra Commander, Andrea Milana. First arc, second arc. A nice bit of consistency.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Okay. Cover A is drawn and colored by Tom Reilly. This is Cobra Commander and Duke having a sword fight in a Cobra throne room. They are full body and moderately far away. This is not like a close-up. This is not head and shoulders. This is not waist up. Bottom third of the cover is 4 steps leading up to the dais, the platform. And then there's this ornate Cobra throne with red and gold. Cobra Commander is, I don't know what the sword move is called, thrusting, lunging forward with the sword. And Cobra Commander is a lefty. Duke is blocking with, and he's a righty, and he's holding a sword, and everything around them is on fire. And so the background of this cover is all black and orange. Duke and Cobra Commander are just a little bit lit with this orange light. If you look at the blue of Cobra Commander, it's not the sort of normal, daylight, daytime blue. And then interestingly, because the throne, the actual Cobra shape, is gold. I don't mean gold color, I mean gold. It is very shiny and reflective with highlights and rendering in a style that we really haven't seen in Tom Reilly's more flat and restrained and sort of old-fashioned color approach. Old-fashioned is a compliment here. And so this cover, actually, when I've seen it sort of in small previews in the last few weeks, because there isn't sort of a close-up of Duke where I can sort of sink my teeth into the way that Tom Reilly draws very little and accomplishes a lot, and the way that he inks, even though this is a Tom Reilly cover, because of the sort of, it's not a medium shot or a close-up, and because of the slightly more modern coloring on the throne, in the back of my mind when I saw this recently, I thought, oh, is that Tom Reilly? Huh, that's very different. In terms of representing the cover, the interior, it's fun because this doesn't quite happen, but this is the right kind of exaggeration that I like on covers, where it is a story scene from the issue. In the issue, Duke's costume is torn and he's got a bloody face and he doesn't use a sword, but close enough. Cover B is drawn and colored by Derrick Chu. Destro is just behind the Baroness. Both of them are 2/3 full figure. We can see them from knees up. Behind them is a Cobra banner, like a hanging, flag cloth that's blue with a little bit of the red Cobra logo. It is on fire. The Baroness is, her weight is on her left leg, and she's leaning slightly to her right, and then she's got her right hand up behind her head, sort of the slightly tired, sort of like scratching the back of your head, like almost like you just took a helmet off and you're like readjusting, having just done something tough. She's in her G.I. Joe armor. Destro is sideways looking back at her, and we're very aware of a giant pistol that he's holding. And on his wrist,
he's holding a giant metaphor, gripping it tightly, looking over.
He's holding a giant banana-shaped cigar that fires bullets. I like this. I like this cover, and not that Tom Reilly had to draw characters closer, but sort of in my mind, this is more like what I thought. If I had to guess what a composition, for a G.I. Joe issue number 6 cover from Tom Reilly was going to be. But I also like this. Cover C is drawn and colored by Lorenzo de Felici, who's been drawing Void Rivals. This is Cobra Commander head and shoulders and chest, and he's taking his helmet off with both his left and his right hand. So his pose is sort of straight on and symmetrical. In the reflection of his battle mask, we don't see anything particular, right? So we don't see another character. We don't see, the Washington Monument. We don't see a Cobra insignia. We just see sort of metallic reflections. But instead of a person's head and neck coming out of the collar of his costume and from his shoulders and rib cage, instead of a head being revealed from below this helmet, there are just several snakes. There are just 4 snakes sort of sprouting out of Cobra Commander's shoulders, upper torso. So this cover is what we call a metaphor, because Cobra Commander is not really a snake man. Who's the Masters of the Universe character? It's not Cobra Khan. It was one of the snake men. And you sort of knock off part of his upper torso, his humanoid upper torso, and there's actually a snake. Sorry folks. I was a He-Man kid. I watched the show and I bought the toys, but whatever year this character that I'm describing was released in, that's the year that I was getting out of He-Man because of G.I. Joe. So please forgive the memory lapse.
King Hiss.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Internet Search. Okay. The background here is yellow with a little bit of just a little bit of brown, just a little bit of green in it. This is not a shocking lemon or sun yellow. And similarly, as with the Tom Reilly A cover, the blue of Cobra Commander's uniform here is not daylight, local Cobra Commander blue. It's a little bit aqua because of all the yellow light in this scene. This cover is both cool and a little shocking and a little upsetting. Cover D is drawn and colored by Karl Kerschl. This is the 1 in 10 ratio variant. Stores had to order 10 copies in any combination of covers A, B, and C to be able to order one of these. And that can go up in multiples. If your store ordered 110 copies in any combination of A, B, and C, they could order up to 11 copies of cover D. This is Cobra Command on the right side facing left. This connects with the analogous cover from last month, issue 5, which we talked about. When you bring them together, the Joes are coming in from the left and attacking the Cobras. It's very cool that the Joe cover for issue 5, the color schemes are green and yellow, with a little bit of brown mixed in. And then for issue 6, the Cobra cover, the color schemes are all blue and red with a little bit of brown mixed in. But Destro is got his right arm forward and he's firing a rocket, and Mercer looks pissed, and Chameleon is running forward holding 2 weapons, and Scrap Iron is standing on the front of a Hiss firing an Energon laser weapon. Cobra Commander is in the Hiss turret holding a staff up, and it's just fun. It's just fun and cool, and I wish Karl Kerschl would draw a lot of G.I. Joe interiors going all the way back to his Flash story in DC's Wednesday Comics, which is getting a new printing soon, actually. Kerschl stuff it's this, that for me, it's that right mix of realistic and simplified, cartoony, animated, and he manages to draw characters that have different faces, and he doesn't over render things. He doesn't noodle in his acting and poses. His stuff is just very appealing and pretty. SYKBOUND should definitely release this as a poster without the logos. That would be totally awesome, and I would put one in my store window. Cover E is the 1:25 ratio. This is drawn by Travis Moore and colored by Adriano Lucas. This is Destro standing with a 1982 Hasbro toy packaging Hector Garrido style explosion. Destro has both fists forward, holding a giant pistol in one hand. He's looking at us. And this is that sort of slightly updated Destro costume in the Energon universe, where he's got sort of more of the like medieval armor on his right shoulder and bicep, and more pouches on his right leg. This isn't the first Destro 1:25 with an explosion background.
No, this would be the first with him in this particular costume, but there would have been a previous one.
Right, in the Destro miniseries, certainly.
In the more classified design, yeah.
Okay. And cover F has not been revealed until this issue sees print, the week that it's actually out, because SYKBOUND considers this cover a spoiler for what happens in the issue or after. And there's a hint at what might be on the cover, because it is drawn by Daniel Warren Johnson and colored by Mike Spicer. That's the team that wrote and drew and colored the first 6 issues of Transformers. Daniel Warren Johnson has continued to write it, and he's been doing the A covers. And so the hint here is that this cover is going to have something Cybertronian, something Transformers on it. And we haven't really gotten much Transformers in this G.I. Joe series. And Mark, you want to click over? This cover is Hound, a 1984 Transformer Autobot who changes into an army jeep. And he's in the woods, the jungle, the bayou. And he is looking down, and he's underlit by a human with a machine gun. Mark, who is this human? Can we tell?
I don't think we really can tell. It looks sort of a bit like a kind of generic kind of army man or Black Ops type guy.
Yeah, or maybe even mercenary. The person has a headphone headset, little mic, in front of their chin. They're holding a machine gun. A bunch of empty shell cases are shooting out, being ejected from the machine gun. They seem to have a tattoo. They're wearing a vest, so they're sleeveless. And Hound is dramatically underlit by just the light coming from the front of the machine gun. And so there are lots of shadows on the tops of his arms and his shoulders. and his head. And in fact, he's sort of holding some giant vines out of the way. He's not holding a weapon. His shoulder-mounted rocket launcher is either not there or sort of retracted. He's not holding his laser pistol in his right hand. His right hand is just sort of reacting. He's not attacking. He's not even defending. He's just sort of discovering. This pose is very particular, right? Hound is not. He's a little surprised, and this cover is representative of what happens at the spoilers. What happens at the end of the issue, but not exactly this scene actually.
Yeah.
Oh, do we have any retailer exclusive variant covers?
Yes, there are a few. So as at the time of recording, we haven't seen all of them. So from the front cover, it tells us generally what we might expect. There is a cover from Rose Best that we haven't seen, and Davy Go. There's also Derrick Chew, who was listed as one of the main covers, cover B. So I wonder perhaps if that might be like a Virgin variant of that same cover. And beyond that, we have got 616 Comics with Ivan Talaveria of Chameleon. So I noticed a little bit of a pattern of Chameleon covers. So, Tim, we have got a new jingle. Covers of Chameleon. They're out each month. Collecting would be easy if your books were less frequent. She's red, black, and blonde. Red, black, and blonde.
Every day, don't buy Void Rivals. Because Rivals is in the next line. You're my kin, but not my rival. Anyway, yes. So, listeners, if you're new to the show, or G.I. Joe comics, you may be unaware of the phenomenon that in the last 5 years, G.I. Joe comics publishers have published a lot of variant covers with the Baroness not necessarily engaged in any story point, like running down a hallway or defusing a bomb or parachuting while attacking someone and getting shot at from below. Maybe she's just standing there. Maybe she's just standing there with her hips thrust out to one side or the other. Maybe she's just standing there with a weapon. And that's okay. We did notice a lot of them, and they started to get conspicuous when A, she was not in the issue, and B, it was this combination of she wasn't in the issue, but she was on the cover. She was drawn a little more sultry, a little more sexy than maybe the story, had she been in it, might have suggested. And these were just a lot of variant covers from retailers. And we're not cynical about it. We've just felt that it's conspicuous. And that has seemed to lessen in the last year and a half with SYKBOUND, which is fun, a bit of a relief. And I think Mark is observing that we may be starting something with Chameleon in this regard.
Yeah.
Because she's a pretty lady in a tight-fitting costume, right? She's not in baggy fatigues or a bulky armor suit. She's not wearing the Cobra snake.
Exactly. So this first one from 616 Comic, it's we often talk about where the shot starts, whether it's feet up, knees up, waist up. This one is butt up, and so it's a little bit cheesecake. It's puts you in mind of possibly someone like Greg Land. So it's Chameleon sort of facing away from us a little, but seeing the side of her chest and the side of her face. Golden locks flowing down her back, and against
and she's standing in Monument Valley. If I can just add one little bit, folks, if you're looking at this cover and you're thinking, well, Mark said it's cheesecake, but I don't think it's overdone. I don't consider this cheesecake. Maybe this is on the line. Maybe this isn't technically cheesecake. I do think the color pattern is recalling Gil Evgen, but I think what turns it into cheesecake is, even though you can't see her legs, the way that her weight is on one leg, she is emphasizing one glute over the other. And I don't think a male G.I. Joe or Cobra character would stand like this. And I don't think artists would think to draw Beachhead like this. And since there aren't a lot of Joes in skin-tight costumes, there isn't a fair comparison. And so maybe it does stick out a little bit. Still a nice drawing. I do like the color palette a lot. And as far as Sexy Baroness, Sexy Chameleon covers go, there have been some that are very conspicuous, whereas this is like, okay, yeah, it's a little bit.
And at least it's well drawn. So the next one up is Clayton Crane, web store exclusive of the chameleon in his sort of painterly style. She's jumping and aiming down the sights of her rifle as she's doing so, with explosions in the background. And I think he often sort of posts time-lapse videos on Facebook of his process for doing these. And when they are launched, they do tend to sell out very quickly.
I am shocked to find just a month or 3 ago that Clayton Crane draws and paints his covers by hand on paper. I could have sworn his work was digital because it just looks digital to me. And maybe 10 years ago his work was. I'm thinking of the Venom versus Carnage miniseries, or the Carnage Toxin miniseries at Marvel. But yeah, this is marker and paint, which is very cool. That's what a technique.
Yeah, I think he does sometimes do a bit of a digital polish for the final version, but most of it is analog. He also produced this she spawn.
I believe her name is Scorch.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, or the title she stars in.
I thought it was Miss Lady She-Spawn. No.
Sorry, folks. There are 6 Spawn books coming out this month, and so I'm getting them a little bit mixed up. But this character is in Scorch.
Okay. So what he did here was he took the original a version, I believe, of the comic. And then I believe he painted over the top of the printed front cover to create this sort of Spawn variant. So that's sort of just, I think, an interesting, one-of-a-kind handcrafted piece is my understanding of that one.
Huh. Fun.
So there we go. Back to this. So next up, it is time for a plot breakdown.
Plot breakdown.
In the Mars headquarters in Washington, D.C., it's a face-off between Duke and Cobra Commander. Cobra Commander tells Duke that he is his father. Actually, no, sorry, I'm getting confused. Let me start that again. Cobra Commander tells Duke that his brainwave bomb will go off in 5 minutes, killing everyone in the immediate area. Each page represents a minute as the count. No, I'm getting confused again. No. So Cobra Commander tells Duke that his brainwave bomb will go off in 5 minutes, killing everyone in the immediate area, and make anyone within 5 miles of the blast loyal to Cobra. The only way to stop it is to kill Dr. Monev. They have a gnarly fight, which results in Cobra Commander killing Monev with energon blasts from his mechanical hand. Meanwhile, the other Joes escaping in a helicopter are convinced to turn around and head back to rescue Duke. Destro calls off his pursuit to head back to Springfield and avoid the blast radius. The Joes arrive just in time to save Duke from Cobra Commander's sword. Cobra Commander flees back to Springfield to reveal a mysterious glowing ball, something so much more than just another weapon, as he finally reveals his secret of Megatron to Destro. The Joes return to the pit to lick their wounds, and Clutch goes for a ride in a Jeep, only to have it transform into a giant robot. Oh boy. Tim.
So I think we're sort of talking about 2 things here. One is this issue as the end of this arc, and this issue as the end of all of the Energon universe G.I. Joe comics so far. Because this does allude back to Duke issue number 1.
Yep.
And Cobra Commander even says, I'm on page 1. I'm glad we finally meet face to face, Duke. Right? Destro told me about you. And then I didn't write it down, but is there a line, or I'm just making this up? Does one of them say something like, it's all been building to this?
Ooh, I don't know.
Maybe I made that up. I think thematically I've been thinking, it's all been building up to this.
It's an interesting point because, it has all been building up to this. We started with Duke and Cobra Commander as separate miniseries, and here they are finally face to face. And in that big splash page, we see the kind of the recap of the Duke story and the G.I. Joe side of that, and then the Cobra Commander sort of flashback and everything that has happened to him up to this point as well.
In his miniseries. And you're talking about pages 2 and 3, which makes for a double page splash where in the present moment, Duke in silhouette, very small on the bottom left side, and Cobra Commander, very small on the bottom right side, are facing off. And in all the space around them, colored in a desaturated light green and desaturated light purple and desaturated light peach, is this montage of the Duke miniseries and the Cobra Commander miniseries. I think it would be a good idea. Can you just remind us, Mark, what was the final line of the last page of the previous issue? The Joes have left. Duke is by himself, and he's got Cobra Commander in his sights with a pistol. And he says,
Who the hell are you?
And if I may slightly line read your voice acting performance there, I think a little bit of it is, who the hell are you?
Well, who the hell are you?
Which is to say, Duke has known about this threat, and he's been getting more specificity in it, but he has not seen Cobra Commander until like G.I. Joe issue 5, right? And so he's had this enemy who's been far away and in the shadows, right? And initially his enemy was Mercer, and then it was Destro, or then it was Major Blood, and Cobra Commander was out there, but he hadn't been named. He hadn't been identified.
And really, Duke's real enemy, starting it all off, was Starscream.
Right.
Before that, and that gets touched on a little bit later on as well. It's like that old song. It's G.I. Joe against Starscream, the enemy.
I was really struck now that we're talking about writing and theme. I'm going to interrupt this for a moment and just talk about the backgrounds on page 1. And as soon as I saw this scene where Cobra Commander and Duke are in this, lab control room with some tanks with liquid that's bubbling, and then Dr. Monov in the background on the Brainwave scanner, and I thought, oh man, Tom Reilly's inking here. The background is mostly just spotted in black. And sort of the only light source is the electricity from the Brainwave scanner and maybe those tanks, right? In panel 2, Cobra Commander and Duke are both lit from behind. And then Jordi Belair has done this really fun thing where the colors on this page are opposites, right? So the background colors are orange and the character colors are blue, although it's a very muted blue. And Reilly has sort of just invented this, tech look. It's like buttons or like little panels on the metal walls, for like electrical wiring, whatever it is. It's just a bunch of rectangles. And I thought, oh, Rob Liefeld, like X-Force issue number 1, or maybe it's New Mutants issue 100, or I don't know, like Youngblood number 2. Like Rob Liefeld sometimes draws these backgrounds where behind someone, they're just these like sort of rectangles or sort of like capsule shaped rounded rectangles, like on the Death Star. And he just draws like 6 of them in a row, like vertically or horizontally. And I've sort of always wondered, like, no, but what actually is that? How would an artist who draws perspective and composition with more aplomb, how would they do it? And here it is. And I'm not saying that Tom Reilly thought to himself, I'm going to draw a Rob Liefeld location, but better. That's not what I'm saying. But inadvertently, he did. And I thought, well, that's a fun comparison, considering that Liefeld has drawn some G.I. Joe comics. And I'm always ready to compare any one G.I. Joe comic to any other. Okay, back to the themes of beginnings and endings and this showdown. And what Cobra Commander is saying, Mark, I wanted to get your read on this, is on pages 1 and 2 and 3, Cobra Commander says, you and I are very alike. And then there are some caption boxes across pages 2 and 3 where Cobra Commander is saying to Duke the ways in which they're similar, and each of them is sort of referencing a visual from the last 10 or so comic books, including their miniseries. And I wanted to ask you, Mark, do you think this works dramatically? Do you think it's accurate? Is it a mind game?
I think it is a little bit of a mind game. I mean, it's a bit of a trope as well, isn't it? You and I, we are more alike than you would like to think. We're nothing alike. It's not a new idea, but it's a nice way of sort of creating this kind of bookend and this amazing montage that they've got. But yeah, like you say, sort of Cobra Commander is a master manipulator. And master of mind games. You think back to him being, held captive by the Dreadnoks, for example. And you kind of get a sense here that Duke, he should have the upper hand here. He's sort of come in, confronted Cobra Commander. He's got his pistol leveled at his head, but somehow he still seems very much on the back foot. It's like, what is this situation that I've stepped into? Who is this crazy guy? And despite having, this gun leveled at him, Duke is the one who seems sort of out of sorts and panicked and so on. Whereas Cobra Commander seems ultimately, supremely confident and at ease.
Yeah, this is the same Cobra Commander who sort of brushed off an assassination attempt 2 issues ago, and who, as the montage reminds us, took on Nemesis Enforcer and manipulated the Dreadnoks. And it's really striking how this soldier has a pistol on him. And once or twice in this, I thought, Duke, shoot him, right? And Duke even taunts me, right? You've seen this in movies and TV shows where the villain is about to push a button and get away, or push a button and make things much worse, or push a button and knock the hero off their footing. And and the Jedi, the cop, the robot hero, whatever, the superhero says what Duke says here at the top of page 4. I said, don't move, right? And I thought, and then 2 panels later, stop, I will fire. It's like, Duke, just shoot him in the kneecap.
And then the next page, it's deactivate it now.
And I want to give Joshua Williamson, writer of this story, some leeway, because in the moment I can be overcome by emotion. I want Duke to have his revenge. I want Cobra Commander to get his comeuppance. But Joshua Williamson knows and has Cobra Commander say that Duke needs Cobra Commander alive to prove all this. To which my response is, right, shoot him in the kneecap. But A, that's not as dramatic. And B, I think when they do start shooting at each other, what that shows us is that Cobra Commander can defend himself and can take on Duke, particularly when Duke has already been so beaten up. Yep. We have a little bit of the, action movie, visual effects movie, comic book finale phenomenon where someone has been beaten up, or they've run across the desert and they've scaled the wall of the villain base, or they've been tortured and they've just escaped, and now they're going to take on the villain, and we cut away to something else, right? Like the rebels at the rebel headquarters, or the other heroes who are defusing the other bombs. And then we cut back to our hero, and they've just sort of reset by 30%. They're 30% less tired, less tortured, less beaten up, just because the story needs them to be able to summon some more adrenaline and actually take on the villain, and I'm okay with that, but I always notice it. And there's a little of that here. But, Williamson is also, I think, in a fun way, sort of continually shown this version of Duke to be a Superman who, can take a beating and get back up and, jumps out of a building to land on a helicopter and is reckless and brave and has a deep reserve of energy. I want to point out one thing that I found fun and funny, which is the third panel on page 4, right? So right after Duke says, "I said don't move," and Cobra Commander is standing in front of a little control panel. And then in that panel, his hand is on a crank.
Yep.
And he says, "And that is why you will lose." And I thought for a second, I don't know if he's about to pull the crank down or if he has just pushed the crank into the up position. Oh, wait. There's a little readout on the front of this panel where Tom Reilly has drawn an arrow, and it's an arrow kind of in like a digital clock font. And it's an up arrow. So without doing like little speed lines to show that Cobra Commander's arm has moved up a few inches, the graphic that's embedded in the panel is showing me that Cobra Commander must have just pushed the crank up. And then I gotta say, in the next 3 panels, it took me a moment to figure out what was happening. That this platform, that Cobra Commander and Duke and the Braveway scanner and the like columns of liquid raises up and raises up so much that it actually gets to the top of the whole building and sort of like there must have been an opening, and the opening is entirely described in color on the final panel of page 4, where Duke is looking up and he says, "What? What are you doing?" And Jordi Belair has drawn a diagonal highlight, like a shaft of light coming down onto Duke's chest and face to show that I guess the ceiling above him is parting. And it is clear, it could be clearer, I think, in the previous panel with the giant sound effect with the orange background where the cables are like tearing away from the platform that's starting to raise. And I feel like Tom Reilly is a strong enough storyteller that he would be able to more clearly, for my money, draw this. And I think maybe this is sort of what you get for like issue 6. It's a hard book to draw. You're sort of running out of time. Some panels are a little more simple than they might be. It's like, okay, he's not going to draw like the whole background and pull the camera back and also draw the ceiling. And I don't mean to disparage Mr. Reilly's fine talents, but I do wonder if this is one of those cases.
Yeah, I think I'm probably in a similar boat to you. I sort of, as I was reading this, I kind of had to flick back and I was like, what? They're on the roof now? And then sort of, figure out the sequencing of it. And so it is not necessarily confusing, but because I think if you missed the initial beat, you can skip back and figure things out. But yeah, there's probably just a tiny bit of storytelling that could have been slightly clearer about that movement of this platform from one floor up.
Another solution could be you take that giant panel with the sound effect TRRRRSSSHHH, and you break that into 2 panels where you have, you show just what they're seeing when they look up. You show the ceiling starting to open up, or you show this platform like 2 inches off the ground, and then like 8 feet off the ground as we see it here. You show a little progression. But, the plot may not call for that. Reilly may have thought, no, I want this page to be 5 panels, not 6. But I do think it's fun how there is some storytelling that happens in coloring, because the roof opening up happens in a reaction shot. You don't see it happen. You see someone see it happen.
I did make the joke that in that little speech, though, from Cobra Commander, he says, you need me alive. I'm the only person who knows the truth. Or maybe it's a bit more like,
I'm the only person who knows the truth about the robots that haunt you. Obi-Wan never told you the secrets of the
No, okay, I'll stop.
I was thinking if we're doing jokes about heroes and villains, where the villain says, "You and I are mirrors of the same, two sides of the same coin." And I thought, well, Falcon and Globulus don't do that at the end of G.I. Joe the movie, but I'm sort of in a Cobra Law kind of mood because I see a silhouette of Globulus a few pages earlier. Anyway, back to page 5. There is at the top of page 5. So this whole platform with the brainwave scanner has now surfaced on the roof of the Mars building, and 1, 2, maybe 3 aspids have taken off and are getting away. And then all the way in the top left corner next to the word balloon, this brain bomb will go off in 5 minutes, is the landing gear of yet another aspid. So there's a nice bit of sort of depth, foreground, middle ground, and background there. And, way in the distance is the Capitol in both panels 1 and 2. And I grew up next to DC, and I've spent a little time in DC. So it's always fun when, I see DC in movies, and I certainly see it on the news. It's fun when I see it in G.I. Joe. Like in Arise Serpentor Arise Part 5.
And the implication here is that this bomb is going to go off, their brain bomb, and it's anyone within 5 miles will be loyal to Cobra, and this bomb isn't just going off anywhere, it's in Washington DC. So it would be reasonable to intuit that would mean that the center of government would be under Cobra's command.
Yeah. Cobra Commander doesn't say it, and that's a nice bit of restraint on Williamson's part, that for all the sort of speeches in the issue and previous issue when Monev and Destro and Cobra Commander are talking about this stuff, we just get the visual. We can pick up on it. I had forgotten how uncomfortable Dr. Monev, and also I just want to remind everyone, because I forgot, Monev is Venom backwards. So clever. In the previous issue, to strap Monev into the brainwave scanner and activate it requires metal probes sticking into his head. And then there's all this screaming and electrical discharge. And we sure see it on the first page of this comic with an "ah" sound effect. And then we see it again very, very far away, small, on page 5. And then we see it again on page 6. And I was thinking, oh, if Monev, ever gets out of this machine, I don't know that he'll be useful to anyone. I think he may be, even without the brain bomb going off, I think he may be mind wiped or just permanently vegetative. And then finally, after saying he was going to shoot several times, Duke shoots. And then Cobra Commander disintegrates one of those 3 bullets with his left hand laser, which, remind us, is a hybrid Cybertronian.
Yeah, I think that's what we're meant to expect. It was sort of introduced kind of in Cobra Commander when he was fighting against Nemesis Enforcer. He had these sort of robot bug things that kind of joined together to kind of create this robotic gauntlet, and then I think it's kind of been now fused to his hand so that it's permanently attached, and is now a souped up version of that robotic claw hand Cybertronian laser thing.
So at the bottom of page 5, Duke fires 3 times, and then on page 6, Duke fires 4 times. That means 7. And a little part of me that is used to G.I. Joe writers named Larry Hama keeping track of number of bullets and kind of weapon or its cartridge wonders if Joshua Williamson and Tom Reilly are keeping track. If Williamson picks a certain gun and is counting how many rounds it carries, if he's making sure that Reilly draws that correct gun and not some other gun, pistol. If, the sound effect for bang, bang, bang in the script, they're double checking. Letterers don't just randomly add, sound effects necessarily. But there seemed to be a plot point in a moment where Duke runs out of ammo. But then it turns out that it's not running out of ammo. It's just the moment is slowing down. It's the difference between him pulling the trigger and then the gun actually firing. Am I reading that correctly? Are we supposed to think that Duke is out of bullets after he shoves Cobra Commander to the ground and gets his boot on Cobra Commander's wrist to keep the laser beam hand out of the way?
Yeah, I think it's meant to be a little bit of a question mark as a sort of a page turn that is like, is that click? Is that an out of bullets click? And then you kind of turn the page and it's a blam. So it's actually him pulling the trigger and the mechanism kind of engaging rather than it being a click click. Oh, I had bullets.
One bullet left. Hey, laughing boy, one bullet left. Thank you.
Well, what do you know? No more bullets.
No more bullets? Hey, laughing boy, no more bullets. No more bullets? Here, let me see that thing.
Well, what do you know? One bullet left.
One bullet left? Hey, laughing boy, there was...
I know!
I did have to look at that first panel of Cobra Commander engaging that laser thing to kind of figure out exactly what was happening there, because you kind of got this exploding thing coming away from his arm,
wrist.
and I think this is his gloved hand sort of expanding and bursting the glove is how I'm reading that sort of black arcing material.
Oh, okay. The metal hand is reconfiguring or stretching out, and the black leather or cloth glove. Mm-hmm. Okay, I didn't quite get that. I thought maybe at first I thought the bullet hit his hand,
right,
and was sort of making his hand kind of blow up while he was also firing off his first laser zap. But I think you are right. Then there's this reaction panel where Cobra Commander holds up his hand and looks at it, and there is no more glove, and his hand is smoking, and he says, just two letters, HM. Not even two M's. Not one M. Thank you. Hey, laughing boy. And then they just start shooting at each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like, Duke's going to die, because we've established that the Energon-powered laser weapons that Cobra has, like on the last page of issue 1 of G.I. Joe, vaporizes Joe's.
Yeah.
And neither of these two characters has cover. They're just standing 10 feet apart from each other, shooting at each other. So from a desperation point, cool. From a tactics standpoint,
not the first time he's run headlong into gunfire in this arc, but it's a nice piece of storytelling. Him sort of like stomping down on his wrist and sort of keeping the Cobra Commander's weapon out of the way for that point of that perspective, and then Duke definitely seems to have the upper hand with that sort of pistol leveled at Cobra Commander's face, and that page turn with then Duke firing the ricochet off the mask and him being shot through his shoulder is probably my favorite moment from this issue. It's a great piece of storytelling and quite the surprise.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen this in a G.I. Joe story. We have seen, there was a G.I. Joe comic where someone shot Cobra Commander kind of point blank, but the bullet went through his battle helmet.
Right.
That was IDW in what was that, 2009. And we have seen once or twice in the cartoon in the 80s and in the Larry Hama comic, someone says, I want to take that helmet off. And Cobra Commander says, I wouldn't do that. And then his helmet has some kind of anti-tamper device, which either actually hurts someone or he explains that it will hurt them. And this is sort of parallel to that, because I want Duke to get his justice, to get his revenge, and I don't think he's going to kill Cobra Commander in this issue. I don't think Joshua Williamson is going to kill off Cobra Commander in this issue. So what an exciting and shocking turn that Cobra Commander's battle mask is bulletproof, and bulletproof at point blank, right? This is not from across the room.
Though it is consistent with the Cobra Commander miniseries, if you remember, the Dreadnoks had a hell of a time trying to get into that helmet.
Right.
Let's keep in this scene, and we can return to the Joes in a minute.
Sure.
There's a grappling, there's a hooting and a hollering as Duke and Cobra Commander are sort of wrestling, and they let's see. I just need to keep you near that bomb long enough to make sure that when it explodes, you die too. Duke is not sort of willing to cross that bridge and actually kill Venom himself, but we can't say the same for Cobra Commander.
Sorry, you're skipping a little bit of plot here. That Cobra Commander says the only way to turn off the brain bomb is to kill Monev.
Yes. And Duke isn't willing to do that, but Cobra Commander is, with this kind of shocking panel of him blasting and taking off Monev's head by the looks of things. What did you do? I warned you. Turning off the bomb meant a sacrifice. And then Duke says, "Oh my God, you killed Venom, you bastard!"
I was moving some G.I. Joe comics around at my home, and I was reminded that maybe 3 years into IDW's continuation of A Real American Hero, like issue, 180, for a little while I was carrying a recommended for mature readers label, very thin next to the barcode, which ticked me off because the Larry Hama G.I. Joe that started at Marvel and continued at IDW is not a 17-plus book. I think it's PG-13 and sometimes PG. And compare that to this book that is T for teen. And you have Cobra Commander killing a guy who's strapped into a chair by zapping his head with his laser hand. And you have Duke shooting that guy with the metal mask point blank in the face, metal mask with a pistol, and then that bullet goes through Duke's shoulder, and then the B word, you bastard.
Yeah.
And this is before anyone pulls out a sword. And
I can't remember G.I. Joe using full-on proper swear words. I'd classify bastard as being, a proper swear word.
Yes, I would agree.
And so it's quite unusual and a little bit shocking to have that in the pages of G.I. Joe. Although it kind of feels appropriate in the context, and just that panel beforehand. Oof is what I would say. That the panel beforehand is a pitch of Cobra Commander looking over at Venom, and in the reflection in his mask, you can kind of see the smoldering head socket of Dr. Venom in that chair.
Yeah, Williamson or Reilly all by himself are using Cobra Commander's reflective face mask to great effect, that several times in this issue we see something reflected in the face mask. Panel 1, page 1, right? Duke is pointing that pistol, right? So that picks up the thread from the last issue, and then the next panel. And then this scene now that we're talking about, where reflected in Cobra Commander's mask is Duke looking serious, and then reflected in Cobra Commander's mask is Venom dead. And then at the bottom of the next page, after a 2-panel sword fight, which is what the cover was alluding to, there's a 4-panel sequence of Cobra Commander pushing a button on something, right? Remember, they're on the roof now. I think part of why them moving up to the roof was a little unclear to me is that the color scheme when we get to the roof is sort of muted, like purple brown, light purple brown, and like light aqua. When we're on the roof and those helicopters are flying away, the sky over the Capitol, right? The part of the building that Cobra Commander walks towards. But once they fight again and some backgrounds drop out, the colors mostly return to like a lot of blue light for the laser beams coming from Cobra Commander's hand. and then some of this orange for Jordi Belair using a limited palette. And I don't think we have to be reminded every panel that we're on the roof. Fighting on a roof feels different because you can see the night sky and there's wind. And if you look out over the ledge, you can see the tops of other buildings. And there's a tiny chance if you're near the ledge that you'll fall. You could push the other guy. I'm not saying we need all of that, but there are a bunch of panels during this fight with no background or we're in very close. And so a bunch of backgrounds do drop out. And between that and a lot of this blue light and Cobra Commander's blue costume and like just blue coloring on Duke, my brain sort of says like, oh, we're back in the building again, right? But we're not. And so Cobra Commander walks over to some part of the wall or module.
Yeah, I think it's the side of the brainwave scanner is what I'm reading that as.
Okay, right. And he pushes a button and a little hatch opens and he reaches in and grabs something. And I said to myself, oh, it's not clear what he's grabbing. And then I realized, oh, we're not supposed to know what it is. It's being reflected in Cobra Commander's face mask. And it's a round thing. Like, oh, it's probably like part of Cybertron, from back in issue 1, the thing that they stole, or, part of something important. And I'm going to interrupt myself. I'm trying to think of the other times that we have seen we've seen a visual use of the reflection of Cobra Commander's battle mask. And there's that moment at the beginning of G.I. Joe the movie when Cobra Commander's leading Cobra Command through the Terrordrome to find the intruder. And we see in the reflection, Pythona runs around a corner and Cobra Commander says, no, not that way, this way, right? So he lets her go by because he knows who it is and he wants all of a sudden her to assassinate Serpentor. But the cartoon maybe almost never otherwise used that device. And I can't think of other examples in the comics. Okay, so he grabs this little round thing and then a helicopter shows up. And Mark, tell us about Cobra Commander boarding this helicopter. He does it in a dramatic way.
Well, the helicopter that arrives is the Joe team who have turned around. So Duke is kneeling down. Cobra Commander has his sword at his throat. Everything looks lost for Duke at this point. You should have run like your team did. They only ran because I ordered them to. Lucky they didn't listen to me. Dun, 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 dun. Here's the reveal of the G.I. Joe team coming back, having turned around, and they're now in a position to rescue Duke, and that threat of them all returning is enough for him to sheath his sword and walk away from Duke and leave him for another day. And with that dialogue, this was fun. I look forward to our battles together. Sort of that slightly unhinged aspect of maybe just enjoying the thrill of having a kind of an arch enemy like Duke. And then he just does this weird thing of arms behind his back, walking like an aristocrat off the top of the building and away, and it's falling.
He just steps off the building and we see him like having fallen his first 3 or 4 feet, but he doesn't seem concerned.
No, he seems like incredibly confident, like he's just going for a stroll off the top of the building. And seemingly, we don't know how, what happens to him next and how he gets back. But when we, turn over the page, he's then back at Springfield. So he's clearly got some way of getting back from the Mars HQ in Washington back to Springfield to the rest of the Cobras who were there relatively quickly.
Either something swooped in and grabbed him on his way down, or something came out from the building below him and caught him, or he has some kind of levitation or flying device. And I don't think that Joshua Williamson has defined that for himself, nor do I think he needs to. This is sort of like Larry Hama having Storm Shadow in, I forget, is it issue 23? Locked in a seamless jail cell, and yet he gets out, right? So, no, he gets out because he's a ninja, and Hama just waves his hand and says he got out. There is no explanation, right? It's not like if you forced Hama to explain it, to say, well, actually, there was a key that he had like swallowed. It's like, no, he just got out because I wrote the next sentence that he's like, the ninja got out. And so similarly, I think in a fun sort of magic trick of a writer waving their hand, Cobra Commander steps off the building, falls. We don't see how far or where. And 2 panels later, 3 panels later, 4 panels later, you turn the page and he's fine and he has evacuated to Springfield. Okay, so I misspoke because I did not interpret the visuals correctly. I thought that this was a Cobra helicopter picking up Cobra Commander and that he stepped off the building and then caught the ladder and climbed up it. And that was him in the helicopter at the bottom of page, 14, with Duke looking over his own shoulder. Thank you for the clarification. That is not what happens. Cobra Commander steps off the building and presumably goes straight down, and that is the Joes coming back to rescue Duke.
I was going to say, shall we rewind to the sequence where they decide to turn around?
Yeah.
So the Joes had got onto this sort of Aspid transport helicopter, escaping, back from Washington D.C. in the direction of the pit, we assume, because they, at this point they had all been captured. They're pretty banged up, and they had escaped, and then they kind of just realized that Duke had been left behind, and they are being chased by Destro in a fang, firing at them with a bang bang bang. So it's Clutch that sort of convinces Baroness to and actually, if you flick back to the pages of issue 5, it's even more evident sort of from where this picks up. They're fleeing in the interior of the helicopter. The Joes are all in a bad way. You've got both Stalker, Risk, and Covergirl kind of all lying on the floor of the helicopter, sort of grasping their wounds. Baroness says, "They're on our tail. Wait, where's Duke?" And this kind of picks up from that sequence. So it isn't just purely a case of coming back for their comrade, but it's also the fact that they've got all of the other Joes lying on the floor in some considerable discomfort, let's say. But Clutch persuades Baroness, "We got to go back for Duke, Baroness. We can't just leave him there. Duke would do it for you because he's a fool. Baroness, Anastasia, I never took you for a quitter." And I don't know what that look in her eye is. It's a bit of striking a nerve, a bit of glee as well. I think she does like sort of the risky situations, and then Destro is, "What are they?" as they sort of turn around and almost take him out in his pursuing Fang helicopter. "She's crazy."
Tom Reilly does something really nice here, which I want to call out. So there is this idea in comics that comics should or should not follow the 180-degree rule, which comes from film. And without explaining it, I'll just use sort of the simpler concept of screen direction. That if someone is facing left, if they're walking to the left and looking left and heading left, and the camera shows them in the left, going to the left direction, you should keep them doing that until they specifically change direction or the camera cuts away to something neutral. And then when you cut back to them, they can be facing the other way. And I think comics should follow the 180-degree rule. Now, there's a compelling argument that because you are, in reading a comic, you're taking in one panel and one page and 2 pages facing each other all at the same time, and comics are not film, whereas in film, you're seeing one image at a time, it's being replaced by the next image, and there's time and sound. These are different art forms. These are different media. They don't need to follow the same rules, and that the arrangement of a page has its own stresses and functions and opportunities. So I think you can make an argument that comics don't need to follow the 180-degree rule, that you could have characters heading to the left and then just heading to the right, and that's okay. I don't like that. I don't think they should. So I was just reading the Jason Aaron Star Wars run from Marvel, which is, I think, 10 years old. This is issues like 40 to 60 or 30 to 50. And these are reprinted in like paperbacks, volume 5, 6, 7, 8. And there's a bunch of X-Wings. There's a battle with a bunch of X-Wings and some Star Destroyers. And Salvador Larroca draws a bunch of these issues. And he is, I think, not subscribing to the 180-degree rule. There's this scene where X-Wings are like Luke Skywalker's in an X-Wing, and they're flying left to right. They're going to the right. They're going to the right. And then the next panel, Luke is just going to the left. And then in the next panel, they're just going to the right again. And nothing in the story has him turning around or swooping in a big circle. It's just a way for artist Salvador Larroca to arrange the page differently. And visually, it's nice. In my head, the story is confusing because I thought, why did Luke turn around? Oh, wait, he didn't. Okay, the quote camera just swung around to the other side. So here on page 7 of issue 6 of G.I. Joe, Destro's in the Fang, the Joes are in the Aspid. Fang and Aspid heading to the right. Destro looking to the right. Clutch and Baroness looking to the right. Fang and Aspid heading to the right. Clutch basically looking to the right. Baroness close up. Her eye is pointing backwards, but her head is aiming to the right. And then Destro's reaction, what are they? He's heading to the right. And it's very clear to me that they're all going one direction. It's probably west because they're in DC and they're heading to Springfield, and Springfield is probably not on the east side of DC because, then you run into the ocean very quickly. And then for the big first panel of page 8, the Baroness has turned the helicopter around, and she's now heading back right at Destro. And what does Tom Reilly do? He has the Aspid now aiming to the left. And the Fang swooshes by it, like almost flipping upside down, almost getting hit head on or chopped up in the rotor blades. And then in the sort of like spinning around and righting himself, Destro says, she's crazy. And now it's a little, he's aiming to the left. He's looking back at the right. And I just appreciate that Tom Reilly for page 7 has both helicopters and every human in a helicopter looking to the right, so that when one of the helicopters turns around and heads to the left, that change is that much clearer and more effective.
And this sequence for me was quite interesting as well, because it was somewhat mirroring what had happened the previous issue, where Destro and Baroness are kind of having a bit of a head-to-head moment and then are interrupted by Chameleon. Last issue, there was that moment where Destro was threatening to torture Baroness, and Chameleon sort of butted in. Maybe I'll have better luck, lover. And this time round, it's Baroness sort of turning the Aspid around and infuriating Destro with a "she's crazy." And then Chameleon pops up with a "Destro, my love. Cobra Commander activated the brain bomb. We need to get as far away as we can now." So yeah, interesting that sort of within those two sequences that we've kind of having this contrast, Destro and Baroness relationship contrasted with a Destro and Chameleon relationship.
All right, so in Springfield, Cobra Commander and Destro are arguing, and in the other room, there's a reaction shot of Mercer, Ripper, the twins, Chameleon, and even Scrap Iron kind of licking their wounds because they've just been beaten up and defeated.
I also got the sense that, Mum and Dad are arguing in the other room.
Yeah, they all look sort of uncomfortable to be hearing this right through the doorway that they're right next to. And Cobra Commander once again puts Destro in his place, that Cobra Commander is really in control. I remind you that you are this close because I allow you to be. You finished. And then Cobra Commander reveals that round thing that's in his hand that he pulled out of the brainwave scanner a couple pages earlier on the roof. And it's not just round like a disc or a puck, like a hockey puck. It's round like the matrix of leadership from Transformers the movie and all Transformers mythology ever since 1986. it is not colored like a orange gold sphere with a blue crystal here, because Jordi Belaire's coloring is so emotional and subjective and not literal and local. The object itself, the shell, is sort of colored black because Tom Reilly is inking it because it's being lit from within. So it's sort of the outside is in shadow, but definitely the light source inside is light electric blue. And Destro says, another weapon? And then Cobra Commander says, perhaps it's time I told you the truth about the war that is coming. And then he pushes a button, and the opaque wall or window or screen in front of them becomes transparent. And the big reveal, Mark, is...
Well, Cobra Commander is sharing an image of Megatron. I wonder if this is a, sort of one of those, a bigger version of that projector that he had on his arm previously.
Or the projector that was in Destro's Fang a few pages earlier.
Indeed.
When you said that Chameleon pops up, I wanted to say it's a heads-up display hologram by the joystick.
A literal, literal heads up.
Okay, so we see Megatron, and this is not Megatron as he's appearing full-bodied and able in this month's issue 19 of Transformers, featuring flashbacks. This is Megatron as we saw him back in Cobra Commander #1, right, where he has no arms.
Mm-hmm. And he was a captive of Cobra.
And he's being held up by, cables and wires, and he's sort of slumped forward as if he's asleep or deactivated or just quietly plotting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final couple pages as we wrap up the issue are back at the pit.
Mm-hmm.
And is that an NPC? Yeah, we got 2 NPCs. Sort of a medic, a blonde medic with a mustache is putting some bandages on Risk.
Mm-hmm.
And another medic with her hair in a tied in the back is putting some bandages on Stalker.
Mm-hmm.
And Baroness has taken her chest armor, her torso armor off, and Duke is having a bit of a debrief with Hawk.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought we were going to get another hint at this other team, the Flint Lady J team that we learned of 1 year ago, 50 weeks ago, as of this recording, last year's Free Comic Book Day. Energon Universe G.I. Joe story. But Williamson is holding them back until, I think, issue 7 of G.I. Joe. And so Duke talks about, trusting his team. And what are your thoughts on this final, the Joes back at base, licking their wounds and reevaluating?
Well, I thought the most interesting, they're sort of reflecting that they've had a few licks in there. They keep on seeming to lose. We lost, but you survived. But and then they're sort of talking about sort of coming together more as a team. But I think the most interesting element is that final thought that Duke had, which is, "Sir, it's important to me that we don't lose sight of why the team was formed in the first place. We need to find the robot that killed my friend." So, in all of this G.I. Joe versus Cobra components, it's like, hold on, remember, guys, the reason that Duke went on this crusade to begin with was because his friend was killed by Starscream, and that's his main motivating factor. So we are living in this world of G.I. Joe and Transformers. Just as Cobra Commander, the starting point for his journey was kind of Megatron captive in Cobra La. The starting point in Duke's journey was Starscream. So it's sort of reiterating this shared Energon universe element, which is then really hammered home with the following sequence.
One moment, just a quick reminder. We keep thinking of, I keep thinking of Tom Reilly drawing this interaction between Duke and Starscream in Duke issue number 1. Technically, that's a flashback because it had already happened in Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers number 2.
Mhm.
That's where it was the present tense.
Mm. Yep.
So yes, we have a bit of this sort of parallel book ending, because what kicks off this whole journey for G.I. Joe is a human, Duke, being surprised by an alien metal man, Starscream, in Transformers number 2 and Duke number 1. And what we have now at the end of this first arc of the full G.I. Joe is a human, Clutch, surprised by an alien metal man, Hound. There's a really nice bit here on this final page, which is that Hound has transformed. It's nighttime, right? So we should say the plot. Clutch says, "I got to take a breather. I'm going to get in this Jeep and just go for a drive." And I'll point out that in the middle page of this 3-page scene where he's like, "I got to go and drive," the first 2 panels go out of their way to show us a Cobra-shaped grenade in his duffel bag that he must have taken with him when he was disguised as a Viper. But the nice detail on the final page here is that Hound has transformed into robot mode and is sort of leaning over, crouching over Clutch in a sort of half defensive, ready. It's sort of half defensive, half offensive, ready stance, right? His fists are clenched. He's leaning down. He's looking with sort of focused interest. But the detail that I love is that his headlights are on. Now, you can say, like, well, he was in car mode a minute ago, 10 seconds ago. It's nighttime. His headlights were on. Of course, his headlights would stay on. This is not something that I'm actually used to seeing and I've read a lot of Transformers comics. When the Transformers are in robot mode, the ones who change into cars, like at IDW, I feel like some of the colorists were just having sort of like in this modern Iron Man mode. It's like any circle anywhere on an Autobot or Decepticon was a thing that could be illuminated, like little nodes and lights and tech bits. But here this is very much Tom Reilly drawing the 1984 Flo Dairy model sheet. And so Hound is kind of smooth. He's sort of made out of shoeboxes, right? This is not the over-designed Michael Bay bits and bits and bits and many, many different surfaces and triangles. But as with that Daniel Warren Johnson cover we talked about at the beginning of the episode, where it's nighttime and Hound is looking down at a human, here is his headlights are on, and that just adds to sort of the strangeness of it, right? Something's wrong. There's a giant metal alien, right? He's shining these lights in my face, and a moment ago he was my car. It's actually the name of my autobiography. It's my life in Transformers. Tim Finn, and a life as a Transformers fan. A moment ago, he was my car. And then one last point on the difference between these two bookends, right? When Duke meets Starscream, it's in a moment of violence and terror because the jet attacks his jet and then kills his friend. And here, Clutch's reaction is kind of funny and lighter. He's worried, but I don't think he's terrified because he says, "Oh boy."
Yeah, and it's the catchphrase of what's he called, Sam from Quantum Leap. It's a kind of a slightly comic touch of like, "Oh man, I'm in over my head" kind of thing. What's going to happen now? So yeah, it's leaving enough for us to kind of interpret what might be happening here. That Hound, who knows quite what he's thinking and going to be doing, but the reaction that Clutch is having isn't one of terror. It's one of being out of his depth.
I want to point out one thing and then Mark ask you a question. So I was struck 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when IDW in their Transformers comics, they started using a sound effect, an onomatopoeia for the transformation sound, and it was like TCHSCHCHET, like chet, right? Like the CH sound with T's, which was the writers like James Roberts and John Barber trying to spell out the 1980s animated Transformers sound effect. Right. So the one that you just did sounded like a lot of S's and K's. And, we're all doing a great job, like with our mouths trying to recreate this sound effect. And I can't quite remember what Daniel Warren Johnson has been using in Transformers for the last 19 issues. But here, Joshua Williamson uses KHEE, KO, KO, KAH, KHEE. And I don't have an opinion on this, like good or bad, or that's not what it's fun, funny, but takes half a page to do it. And I think this is notable that people reading this comic, I don't know what percentage, half of them are only reading this comic. They're not also reading Void Rivals, Transformers. That number may be way off, but even if it's like 80-20, that's still thousands of people that are only reading this comic and know that this Transformers, they're probably seeing the covers in the back of the book for the other two books. Maybe they go to their store, or they see some previews online, and they have a very general sense, like, oh yeah, the other Transformers book. But Williamson really gives this scene space because he gives it a whole 2 pages once Clutch is actually finished talking to Baroness and driven away. And the actual transformation is 5 panels. It's half a page. And, stuff is not happening that slowly over in Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers. Maybe back in issue 1 and issue 2. But for all intents and purposes, for G.I. Joe readers who read the 4 miniseries and now these 6 issues of G.I. Joe, this is the first time we've seen this. And Williamson does not rush it. He lets it breathe so that we're experiencing it through Clutch's point of view, where it's happening beneath him and he doesn't know what it is. Right? The camera on this second to last page, it's a comic, not a movie. There's no camera. The camera on this second to last page doesn't like zoom out and show the robot man coming out of the car. It's mostly on Clutch and sort of what he's not seeing, right? We see the reaction shot, and then we see a metal fist, and then we get the full page reveal.
Yeah, and it's interesting to call that out as well, that beyond that Starscream in Duke 1 and Megatron in Cobra Commander 1, we've not really seen, and while there's been these crossover elements of the Energon universe, we've not actually seen a Transformer, transform or appear in the pages of the G.I. Joe titles up to this point. And so it's a bit of a sort of milestone moment for this shared universe, that this is the point at which the Transformers are much more front and center as not just a kind of background energy source or anything like that. It is a giant metal robot man in the pages of the G.I. Joe book, and they sort of waited this long to kind of get to that point.
Yeah, so we can count. There were 20 issues of miniseries. There was the Free Comic Book Day, and now there've been 6 issues of a G.I. Joe. So they've really held this back. We knew from the beginning, and remember the cover to Duke #1 has a Transformer on it, and the cover to G.I. Joe #1, which is kind of refers back to, same background color, Duke's standing there similarly with purpose. All the Joes and Cobras, I keep forgetting this, on the cover to cover A, Tom Reilly's cover for G.I. Joe #1, they're standing on Transformers. You see a bit of Soundwave's chest. You see probably Optimus Prime's shoulder, even if it's not, it's a cover exaggeration. It's a representation. It's not a literal scene. Mark, I wanted to ask you, when you got to page 18 of this issue, G.I. Joe issue 6, and Clutch says, being undercover with those Cobra guys wasn't easy. At any moment, I thought they were going to catch me. I need a minute, I need to go for a drive, clear my head. And he walks up to this Jeep. So, Mark, when you got to page 18, did you know or suspect what was going to happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, it had been a little bit spoilt for me because I was kind of aware of the free comic book day reveal, so I wasn't coming into it completely cold. But I think even without that, I would probably look at the shape of that vehicle and have enough knowledge of Transformers to think that looks very Transformers-y. There's very specific details there that makes it look like the kind of joints that could transform, and also, I know enough about Transformers to be aware of the character of Hound and know that he's a Jeep. So I think just going by this picture, I would kind of mentally make the leap of thinking that's probably what that is. It's a very specific kind of Jeep for it not to be leading in that direction.
There are sort of two alternates here. Clutch could get in a vamp and just drive off. Or Clutch could get in a vamp and it could transform. I think that's too much. I'm sure, the writers would figure out a way to make it fun, make it work. But, we've already seen the Matrix, or at least the core of it, not the two handlebars. And, we've already seen Megatron. So the part of me that keeps wanting them to hold off really having Transformers in this series, because I want it to be a G.I. Joe series. I don't want it to be a Transformers series with some G.I. Joe characters running around. Part of me is a little sad, but at the same time, I do firmly believe that the G.I. Joe comic will be about G.I. Joe and Cobra. Mm-hmm. Whatever extent Transformers props, like an Energon weapon or a Matrix of Leadership, are showing up. And, in the next 6 issues, there may be a scene where Clutch and Hound have a little adventure or a conversation. Or the next 6 issues may just focus on Flint and Lady J and Beachhead. What happens next with them, or what they've been doing for the last 6 issues. And so I am satisfied. This doesn't feel like too much. I have said in previous episodes, I don't want G.I. Joe to exist in a world where it has to be part of Transformers, because the Transformers brand is bigger and more popular and more accepted, and G.I. Joe is smaller and less accepted. I don't want it to be like a crutch. If that's the only choice, then I think Hasbro should go for it. But I do think G.I. Joe is strong enough to sit on its own. And, hey, I've got this other G.I. Joe comic coming from SYKBOUND every month that sits on its own. And then this is the one that can, have these very fun and thoughtful connections to other Hasbro brands.
I thought the question you were going to ask me about this page was slightly different, actually, because sort of going by this dialogue here, Baroness says, "You're allowed to leave the pitch, Clutch." There's a kind of slight implication of phrasing that another way, almost like, hold on, where are you going? I thought we weren't allowed to leave.
Yes.
And so he's like, I just need to go. And then, see you, Baroness. Just the phrasing of that is almost like, I'm out of here kind of thing. And then as he's driving away, there's this zooming in on that bag and this very specific kind of Cobra grenade thing. I was wondering, is that Cobra grenade thing a duplicate of the Matrix of Leadership device that we had just seen opened by Cobra Commander, which we don't know a huge amount about, but when unopened seems to look like it might be a black ball of some description. So is it something similar to that? And the other thought that crossed my mind was like, it's something different going on with Clutch. He's sort of trying to sneak this thing away. Could he be a double agent? Could he be Zartan? Something like that. Is something else going on here with this particular scene as to why he's seems to be sneaking away to some degree with this very specific zoomed in Cobra grenade thing?
That's all good and interesting. My my question about sort of any subtext here were, Baroness is not flirting with Clutch. She's not interested in Clutch.
No.
I think Baroness is not interested in anyone, or sort of hates Duke and would become interested in him, or maybe is interested in Destro, right? I think those are seeds that are being planted. But for a moment, I thought, oh, is there something going on from Baroness aimed at Clutch? And then I thought, no. But then I thought, oh, is he maybe not going to come back?
Hmm.
And then I thought, no, I don't think that that's what his dialogue or his character suggest at all. But just to the extent that I'm thinking of possibilities, right? Because these books keep surprising us, and sometimes we guess right, and sometimes we guess wrong. But certainly, if there was any part of him that doesn't want to come back, I mean, I don't mean like he's a traitor and a deserter. I mean like this is just sort of too big and he's going to go somewhere else and help in a different way, right? But again, I don't think that's it. But certainly, once his Jeep becomes revealed as Hound, no, Clutch is in.
Right.
So it's sort of like, no, you can't leave base. We're all on this mission. We've all got these secrets. Like, you better get back to base with your friend, your tall friend whose headlights are still on.
Yeah.
And when I get to this page, I'm thinking, oh man, they're not going to pick this up next issue. I bet the first page next issue is, Flint and Beachhead on some mission somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I'll be like, when is this? When, have they formed the other team yet?
Mm.
Where's Duke?
Yeah, the big oddity for me is that if he does just want to take a minute and go for a drive and clear his head, why is he taking this bag with him? And why specifically is it being called out that the bag is open with this very strange sort of Cobra device thing? What's going on there? Yeah, we might. I don't know. This might be a plot point that is not touched on in the Free Comic Book Day, and it might be that it doesn't get touched on until the end of the next arc. So issue 13, half a year away. But
it's funny that you mentioned, is this Zartan? And it's sort of, every time you read an X-Men comic, like, oh, is this Mystique?
Yeah.
Is this character acting out of character because the writer is bad or the editor is not, paying attention? Or, oh, is this Mystique? Right. So, in G.I. Joe animation, it could also be, the Baroness is in disguise in like the first episode of G.I. Joe as Juanita Hooper, and it could be Zorana. But yes, it's sort of a fun reminder that in any G.I. Joe comic ever, anyone could be Zartan. Mm-hmm. And it's up to the writers to not overdo that.
And it was hinted in the pages of Cobra Commander that Zartan was out there on some mission. So I am fully expecting at some point there will be a reveal, and we'll find out that someone was Zartan all along.
It's not just going to be that Zartan comes in and says, okay, what do you need me for? That he'll say, yeah, I've been doing that thing that the readers didn't know about. Surprise!
Mm-hmm.
Or someone will take their mask off and it's Zartan! I don't know any Zartan.
So this story will get picked up in Free Comic Book Day, Saturday, 3rd of May. If you missed that, it will be in the ENERGON Universe 2025 special, a week and a half later, I think it is. And so alongside that will be a Transformers story and Avoid Rivals story 2.
I wish we could talk about the letters page, if there were any good or interesting letters at the end of G.I. Joe issue 6. Listeners, Mark and I are working from a preview copy, not the printed copy that stores will sell. And in our preview copy, the letters page is accidentally a Void Rivals letters page. Mm-hmm. So A, I don't know what the letters are in G.I. Joe 6 yet. B, I hope this is not an error that shows up in the printed edition of G.I. Joe 6, because that would make me sad. And I think some G.I. Joe readers would say, what's a skuckzoid?
Indeed.
Because the Void Rivals letters page keeps referring to the skuckzoid.
Right. And we've got, and it's Andrea Milana is drawing the G.I. Joe Free Comic Book Day, I am assuming from the
Yes,
credits.
yes. We can say this: the lead story in the ENERGON Universe 2025 comic, which is both a Free Comic Book Day comic and a comic you can buy a couple days later. The lead story, which is G.I. Joe, is Joshua Williamson, Andrea Milana, and Lee Lowridge. So in terms of art, we are getting a sort of preview of what the next arc of the main G.I. Joe book is going to look like. This is not drawn by Jason Howard swooping in just for one appearance. This is the team doing the next run.
Oh, that's very cool, because that team will deliver us issue 7 of G.I. Joe on sale May the 21st. Look out for a cover featuring Beachhead. Dun, dun, dun. Very exciting. And as for us, we are covering the G.I. Joe issues as they are released. So everything from the ENERGON universe pertaining to G.I. Joe, but also everything ARA. So look for the latest issues of ARA from Larry Hama, as well as all of those special silent missions, 5 new stories which were released during April. So Talking Joe has an episode covering each one of those, as well as talking to several of the creators. So you can find us in the normal places. talkingjoe.co.uk is the website that has links to all of those places that we can be found, like the Facebook group, Twitter, Instagram, and so on. We are also on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe. So a big thanks to all of our backers: Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike D, Shane, V2, and Infinite Entertainment for supporting us and for getting early access to everything that we do. Now, Tim, when you are not talking to me about all things G.I. Joe, your outie gets up to all sorts of things. So I had prepared a wellness session for you to talk about your outie.
Oh my God.
I will now share with you some facts about your outie. Because your outie is an exemplary person, these facts should be very pleasing. Just relax your body and be open to the facts. Try to enjoy each equally. These facts are not to be shared outside this podcast. But for now, they're yours to enjoy. Your outie with your producing partners has a YouTube channel called Atomic Abe. Your outie is kind to all cats. I'm sorry, please try to enjoy each fact equally and not show any preference over the others. Your outie is writing a book about the history of G.I. Joe. Your outie also likes Transformers. Your outie blogs about G.I. Joe at arealamericanbook.com. Your outie often carries a sketchbook and an emergency comic book. Your outie owns a comic shop, Hub Comics, in Somerville, just outside Boston. Your outie does not need his ums and ers edited from all of his everyday speech. Thank you. This session has concluded. There we go. So for anyone who is in the dark, this was a reference to Lumen Industries Wellness Session from the amazing 2 series so far drama on Apple TV, Severance.
Thank you.
Right. So, with all of that said and done, I think we are wrapped up with issue number 6 of G.I. Joe from SYKBOUND. But before we go, Tim, can you just remind us of some very important facts?
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters.
My Audi is kind and loves the soft fur on cats. My Audi appreciates dark chocolate.